Welcome back to another read aloud of Hoot. Today we are joined by a squirrel because I feel like today I've been getting very easily distracted. It's kind of like when Diego and I go for a walk. As soon as a squirrel runs by, his attention jets off after the squirrel instead of what he should be focusing on. That's kind of me today. We've also got Diego who's lounging. I've got my stay-at-home dog mom mug. Diego is appreciating the fact that I've become a stay-at-home dog mom. And got my awesome blanket. Oh, I love this blanket. Okay, let's get back into the story and see what happens. Chapter 9. Ready? Ready. School was nerve-wracking. Every time Roy entered one of his classrooms, the other kids stopped what they were doing and stared. It was as if they were surprised to see he was still alive, and with all of his limbs intact. After leaving algebra class, Roy heard a stupendous phony farting noise behind him in the hallway. Garrett. He took Roy by the shirt sleeve and led him to a bathroom. "You look sick. You should go home early," Garrett advised. "I feel fine," Roy said, which wasn't true. He still had a headache from the thumping Dana had given him on the bus ride. "Dude, listen to me," Garrett said. "I don't care how you think you feel. You're sick. Really sick, okay? You need to call your mom and go home." "What have you heard?" "He'll be waiting for you after 7th period." "So let him wait," Roy said. Garrett tugged Roy into one of the toilet stalls and locked it from the inside. "This is so lame," said Roy. Garrett touched a finger to his lips. "Shh, I know a guy in Dana's PE class," he whispered excitedly. "He says Dana's gonna snatch you before you get on the bus home." "And do what?" "Duh. Right here at school?" "How?" Roy asked. "Bro, I wouldn't hang around to find out. Hey, you never told me you busted him in the chops, too." "That wasn't me." "Sorry." Roy unlocked the toilet stall and gently nudged his friend out. "What's up? Who's out there, huh?" "Oh, another dog." "See? Easily distracted today. Here, take a seat." Roy unlocked the toilet stall and gently nudged his friend out. "So, what are you going to do?" Garrett called over the top of the door. "I'm going to go to the bathroom since I'm here." "No, I'm talking about you-know-who." "I'll think of something." "But what?" Even if Roy managed to elude Dana Matherson this afternoon, the drama would start all over again Monday. Dana would resume stalking him, and Roy would have to dream up another escape plan, and that's how it would be every single day until school let out in June. Roy had other options, none particularly appealing. If he reported Dana to Miss Hennepin, she'd do nothing more than summon him to the office for a stern lecture, which Dana would laugh off. Who could take seriously a vice principal with one gnarly hair sprouting out of her lip? If Roy told his parents about the Dana situation, they might be alarmed enough to withdraw him from Trace Middle School. Then he would end up getting bused to some private school where he'd be forced to wear the same dorky uniform every day, at least according to Garrett, and then learn Latin. A third alternative was Roy try to apologize to Dana again, this time oozing remorse and sincerity. Not only would that be groveling, it probably wouldn't achieve the desired effect. Dana would still hassle him without mercy. His final option was to stand and fight. Roy was a practical boy. He knew the odds were overwhelmingly against him. He had quickness and brains on his side, but Dana was big enough to crush him like a grape. Roy remembered the time that he and his father had a talk about fighting. "It's important to stand up for what's right," Mr. Everhart said, "but sometimes there's a fine line between courage and stupidity." Roy suspected that fighting Dana Matherson fell into the second category, that of stupidity. While he disliked the prospect of getting beaten to a pulp, what worried him even more was the effect it would have on his mother. He was very conscious of being an only child, and he knew his mom would be devastated if something happened to him. Roy had almost had a little sister, though he wasn't supposed to know about it. His mother carried the baby for 5 months, and then one night she got really, really sick, and an ambulance rushed her to the hospital. When she came home a few days later, the baby wasn't there anymore. Nobody really explained why. Roy was only 4 years old at the time, and his parents were so upset that he was afraid to ask any questions. A few years later, an older cousin told him what a miscarriage was and confided that Roy's mother had lost the baby girl. Ever since then, he tried not to give his parents extra reasons to worry about him. Whether on horseback, bike, or snowboard, he refrained from doing some of the wild, daredevil stunts that boys his age usually tried. Not because he feared for his safety, but because he felt it was a solemn duty as an only child. Yet there he was, this morning, on the school bus, insulting the same pea-brained thug who already held a mortal grudge against him. Sometimes Roy didn't understand what came over him. Sometimes he was just too proud for his own good. The last class of the day was American history. After the bell, Roy waited for the other students to file out ahead of him. Then cautiously he peeked into the hall. No sign of Dana Matherson. Roy, is something wrong? It was Mr. Ryan, the history teacher, standing behind him. No, everything's fine, Roy said breezily, stepping out of the classroom. Mr. Ryan closed the door behind them. You go home? You're going home too? Roy asked. I wish. I've got to grade papers. Roy didn't know Mr. Ryan very well, but he walked with him all the way to the faculty lounge. Roy made small talk and tried to act casual by constantly checking behind him to see if Dana was lurking anywhere. Mr. Ryan played football in college, and since then he hadn't gotten any smaller, so Roy felt fairly safe. It was almost as good as walking with his dad. You taking the bus home? Mr. Ryan asked. Sure, Roy said. But isn't the pickup line on the other side of school? Oh, I'm just getting some exercise. When they reached the door of the faculty lounge, Mr. Ryan said, Don't forget the quiz on Monday. Right. War of 1812, said Roy. I'm ready. Yeah? Who won the Battle of Lake Erie? Oh, Commodore Perry. Which one, Matthew or Oliver Perry? Roy took a guess. Matthew? Mr. Ryan winked. Study a little more, he said. But have a good weekend either way. Then Roy was alone in the hall. It was amazing how rapidly schools emptied after the final bell, as if someone pulled a plug under a giant whirlpool. Roy listened closely for footsteps, sneaking footsteps, but heard only the tick-tick-tick of the clock mounted above the door of the science lab. Roy observed that he had exactly 4 minutes to reach the bus pickup zone. He wasn't worried, though, because he'd already mapped out a shortcut through the gym. His plan was to be among the very last to board the bus. That way he could grab one of the empty seats up front and jump off quickly at a stop. Dana and his cronies customarily occupied the back rows and seldom bothered the kids sitting up near the front. Not that Mr. Kessie would ever notice, Roy thought. He jogged to the end of the hallway and turned right, heading for the double doors marked the back entrance for the gymnasium. He almost made it, too. And then the story pauses. Ooh. I think we're going to get to Officer Delinko's story before we figure out what happened to Roy. Let's be crystal clear about this, Mr. Brandit. You didn't report it to the police. No, sir, Curly said empathetically into the telephone. Oh, no, sir, Curly said emphatically into the telephone. So there shouldn't be any paperwork, correct? No possible way for this latest travesty to end up in the press. Not that I can figure, Mr. Muckle. For Curly it had been another long, discouraging day. The sun had finally broken through the clouds, but after that it was all downhill. The construction site remained uncleared, the earth-moving equipment still sitting idle. Curly had stalled as long as possible before phoning Mother Paulo's corporate headquarters. Is this your idea of a sick joke, Chuck Muckle? Had snarled. It ain't no joke. Tell me again, Mr. Brannett. Every miserable detail. So Curly had repeated everything, beginning from when he had arrived at the site early in the morning. The first sign of trouble had been Kalo waving a tattered red umbrella and chasing his 4 attack dogs along the inside perimeter of the fence. He was shrieking hysterically in German. Not wishing to be mauled by the dogs or gored by the umbrella, Curly had remained outside the gate, watching in puzzlement. A Coconut Cove police cruiser had pulled up to investigate. Officer Delinko, the same cop who dozed off while guarding, quote-unquote, the construction site. It was because of him that the spray painting fiasco had made the newspaper and gotten Curly into hot water. I was on my way to the station when I saw the commotion, Officer Delinko had said, raising his voice over the barking of the Rottweilers. What's wrong with those dogs? Nothing, Curly had told him. It's just a training exercise. The cop had bought it and driven away, much to Curly's relief. Once the Rottweilers were secured on leashes, Kalo had hustled them into the camper truck and locked the tailgate. Furiously, he turned toward Curly and jabbed the umbrella in midair. You tried to kill my dogs. The foreman had raised his palms. What are you talking about? Kalo had thrown open the gate and stomped up to Curly, who was wondering if he should pick up a rock for self-defense. Kalo was drenched in sweat, the veins in his neck bulging. Snakes! He'd spit out the word. What snakes? Ja. You know what snakes? The place is crawling with them. Poisonous ones. Here Kalo had wiggled one of his pinky fingers. Poison snakes with shiny tails. No offense, but you're nutty as a fruitcake, bud. Curly never once had seen a snake on the Mother Paula site, and he would have remembered if he had. Snakes gave him the willies. Nuts, you say? Kalo had seized him under one arm and led him to the portable trailer that served as Curly's office. There, coiled comfortably in the second step, was a thick, mottled specimen that Curly recognized as a cottonmouth water moccasin, common in southern Florida. Kayla was right. It was seriously poisonous, and its tail was sparkly. Who do we know that had sparkly-tailed moccasin snakes? Curly had found himself backing up. I think you're getting carried away, he said to Kalo. Ja, you think? The dog trainer then hauled him toward the fence to point out another moccasin, and then another, and still another. 9 in all. Curly had been flabbergasted. What you think now? Think Kalo is nutty as a fruit bar? I can't explain it, Curly had admitted shakily. Maybe all this rain brought him out from the swamp. Yeah, sure. Listen, No, you listen. Each dog is worth $3,000. That is $12,000 barking here in the truck. What happens? Dog gets bit by snake. Dog dies. Yeah? Again, I do apologize for my terrible German accent. I am trying my best. I didn't know about no snakes, I swear. His miracles, the dogs, they all okay. Pookie Face, the snake came after him this close. Kalo had indicated a distance of about a yard. I take umbrella and push him away. It was just about then Kalo had accidentally stepped in an owl burrow and twisted his ankle. Rejecting Curly's offer for assistance, the dog trainer had hopped on one leg back to the camper truck. I go now. Don't ever call me again, he had fumed. Look, I said I was sorry. How much do I owe you? 2 bills, I sent. One for the dogs, one for my leg. Oh, come on. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I'll talk to a lawyer instead. Kalo's pale eyes had been gleaming. Maybe I cannot any longer train dogs. My leg get hurt so much. Maybe I go on what you say, disability? Oh, for Pete's sake. Mother Paula is very big company. Has lots of money, yeah? After Kalo had roared away, Curly carefully made his way to the trailer. The cottonmouth was no longer sunning on the steps, but Curly didn't take any chances. He set up a stepladder and hoisted himself through a window. Fortunately, he saved the phone number of the reptile wrangler who had successfully removed the alligators from the toilets. The guy was tied up on an iguana call, but his secretary promised he'd come to the construction site as soon as possible. Curly had holed up in the trailer for almost 3 hours until the reptile wrangler pulled up to the gate, armed with only a pillowcase and a modified 5-iron. The guy had methodically scoured the Pancake House property in search of sparkle-tailed winter moccasins. Incredibly, he found none. That ain't possible, Curly had exclaimed. They were all over the place this morning. The reptile wrangler just shrugged. Snakes can be unpredictable. Who knows where they went? That's not what I want to hear. You sure they were moccasins? I never saw one with a shiny tail. Thanks for all your help, Curly had said snidely and slammed the trailer door. Now it was he who was on the receiving end of peevish sarcasm. Maybe you can train the snakes to guard the property, Chuck Muckle was saying, since the dogs didn't work out. It ain't so funny. You got that right, Mr. Brandon. It's not funny at all. Them cottonmouths can kill a person, Curly said. Really? Can they kill a bulldozer too? Well, probably not. Then what are you waiting for? Curly sighed. Yes, sir. First thing Monday morning. Music to my ears, Chuck Muckle said. And we come to another pause. So it looks like we're going to get back to Roy's story and figure out what happened on his way to the bus. The janitorial closet smelled pungently of bleach and cleaning solvents. Inside it was almost as black as night. Dana Matheson had reached out and snagged Roy as he ran towards the gym, pulling him into the closet and slamming the door. Nimbly, Roy had squirmed out of Dana's moist grasp, and now he huddled on the cluttered floor while Dana stumbled around, punching blindly. Scooting on the seat of his pants, Roy made his way toward a paper-thin stripe of light that he assumed was shining through a crack beneath the door. From somewhere above came a bang and a pained yelp. Apparently, Dana had delivered a ferocious uppercut to an aluminum bucket. Somehow... What's up? What's up, honey? Somehow, Roy located the doorknob in the darkness. He flung open the door and lunged for freedom. Only his head made it to the hallway before Dana caught him. Roy's fingertips squeaked across the linoleum as he was pulled backwards, and again the door closed on his shouts for help. As Dana yanked him to the floor, Roy desperately groped for something with which to defend himself. His right hand found what felt like a wooden broom handle. I got you now, cowgirl, Dana whispered hoarsely. He locked Roy in a fierce bear hug that emptied the air from Roy's lungs like an accordion. His arms were pinned to his sides, and his legs were dangling as limply as a rag doll's. Now, aren't you Thory, you messed with me? Dana gloated. As Roy grew dizzy, the broom handle dropped from his fingers, and his ears filled with the sound of crashing waves. Dana's clench was smothering, but Roy found he could still move his lower legs. With all his unsapped strength, he started thrashing both feet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Roy felt himself falling. He landed face up so that his backpack absorbed the impact. It was still too dark to see, but Roy surmised from Dana's whimpering grasp that he'd kicked him in a very sensitive part of a boy's body. Roy knew he had to move swiftly. He tried to roll over, but he was too weak and breathless from Dana's brutish hug. He lay there helplessly, like a turtle that had been flipped on its back. When he heard Dana bellow, Roy closed his eyes and gripped himself for the worst. Dana fell heavy upon him, clamping his meaty paws around Roy's throat. This is it, Roy thought. The dumb goon's really gonna kill me. Roy felt hot tears roll down his cheeks. Sorry, Mom. Maybe you and Dad can try again. Suddenly, the door of the utility closet flew open, and the weight of Roy's chest seemed to vaporize. He opened his eyes just as Dana Matheson was being lifted away, arms flailing, a stunned expression on his pug face. Roy remained on the floor, catching his breath and trying to sort out what had just happened. Maybe Mr. Ryan had overheard the sounds of the struggle. He was plenty strong enough to hoist Dana like a bale of alfalfa. Eventually, Roy flopped over and got to his feet. He fumbled for the light switch and rearmed himself with the broom handle just in case. When he poked his head out of the closet, he saw the hallway was deserted. Roy dropped the broom handle and streaked for the nearest exit. And he almost made it, too. And that's where we end the chapter. So, we got to figure out what happened, why Roy was suddenly, or who suddenly saved Roy, and then how he got into trouble again here. And then why is the boy, Beatrice's brother, without shoes, bringing his snakes to the construction site of the pancake house? And I'm assuming if he's the one that put the snakes there, then maybe he's the one that put the alligators there, and maybe he's also the same one who's pulling up the stakes and filling in the holes. So I wonder if he doesn't want the pancake house to go in for some reason, but I guess we'll have to wait until tomorrow to find out. I hope you're enjoying the story. Until next time.